everybody, welcome back. Today we're taking a look at this Cub Cadet 2X snowblower with the MTD Powermore IntelliPOWER Engine on it. I'm going to show you everything there is to know about these and how to fix this if you're having an issue with your snowblower starting. First off, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoy the content as we go. These Powermore engines, private labeled by MTD for Cub Cadet, Bilt, and a bunch of other brands, are very common out here. We're going to see these a lot more on Craftsman and every other brand. They have the selection here for the throttle where you can turn it up and down. Low throttle, medium throttle, and high throttle. The rest of the setup on these for your choke, your run, your primer, and your stop key are exactly the same as on the other brands or on the other models of this engine. Just an updated version that uses this IntelliPOWER as opposed to an actual governor linkage. These don't even have a linkage to a mechanical governor. We'll dive a little bit more in. First thing we want to do when testing anything is obviously check the oil. Make sure your oil level is good, that there's not gas mixed in with it. Smells good, no problem. The oil level is perfect. Looked a little bit thin. I almost thought there was gas in it at first. That doesn't want to go back on there very easily. We can try firing it up. Check the gas, make sure there's plenty of gas in it. As we try to fire this thing up, I'm just going to put it on medium. Set it to choke. I'll prime it and start it. It starts right up if you prime it, and then it dies right back out. This unit will stay running as long as we keep priming it. To me, that tells me, obviously, we're not getting enough fuel. That or there's something wrong with the IntelliPOWER system. Hopefully, we're not going to have issues like that with these engines anytime soon. If it's not starting or you're not getting hardly anything out of it, we'd first want to check the spark plug before we do anything. We know that this snowblower has good spark because we can keep it running as we're priming it. If you're not sure, you can't get anything out of it, pull the spark plug wire out and take the spark plug itself out. These will have a F7 RTC, I believe, made by Torch. We replace those with an NGK BPR6ES. We normally use a spark checker, and we'll just hook it on here as we're going to start it and see if the green light goes to green. In the middle, we know it's okay. If it's high here or low there, we know we have an issue. If it's showing high on here, normally it's because it's flooded. If it's showing low, it's usually grounded out. We see bad spark plugs sometimes. But if you want to check that spark plug, you can just plug it in there and you can hold it to the side. You want to insulate yourself with like a rag or something here as you're holding it so you don't get shocked. But you can hold it to the side to any of the metal here, and you should see a spark between this outside and the inside probes. If you're not getting that, you know that you have an issue with the spark plug or the ignition system somewhere. We know that's not the case here, as it is starting as long as we keep priming it. We're going to dive in towards a carburetor issue, as that's likely what's wrong with this. That's likely what's wrong with any of them if they have this kind of issue. As we go towards addressing a carburetor issue on this, if you found fuel inside the oil at all, then you know that it's a carburetor issue because it's went past the needle in the seat in the carburetor and leaked into the crankcase. You want to flush all that out and do this carburetor cleaning as we show. if you don't know where the fuel came from that's in this, you'll definitely want to drain it because it could just be a fuel quality issue also. We're going to take out some 10mm bolts. We've got 2 on the outside and then 2 on the inside to get this cover off. Just all the ones on the face here. They're all going to be different sizes. The 2 that are smaller go to the outside here, and the 2 that are larger go to the 2 here. This just pops straight up and off. That's your choke cap. It's not held on by anything. And then to take this off, you're just going to pull it straight up and then kind of out and away. There, this is clipped in. That's your primer tube. We can pull it off also. Just pull straight off. Get it away. Now we're to the carburetor. This carburetor has a electronic control motor here on the throttle of it. And take the 2 10mm nuts off. Get everything kind of close and pull this towards us. This whole piece comes up and off now. You do want to pay attention that these spacers do not come out. So they can come out and you can lose them. And then when you go to put that back on there, it's just going to smash that plastic back down instead of being spaced how it should. There is quite a bit of fuel inside the intake there, looks like. This carburetor comes off by just taking the fuel line off. And we can twist the fuel line, just kind of twist to the side and pull it up and off. We'll drain this fuel since we don't know where it came from, and that could be the only issue, but we're also going to take the carburetor apart, see exactly what's going on there. Fuel definitely doesn't smell great, but doesn't smell horrible either. This whole assembly then pulls straight out. Again, you do have this electronic control motor on here. There is no plug-in for it that's accessible, so we're going to take the 2 Phillips head screws out of the top and pull it off. Now this is kind of extensive for some people to do, but really it's not that hard of a repair. So hopefully this will get you where you need to be if that's the case. And this pulls straight up and off. Now this will snap back when that happens. I'll show you a little bit more about how that goes back together in a minute. You can move this motor to actually match with that as we go back in, because there's a flat spot here. It does have to match back up as we go back in, but be careful not to just let that slap back because it is under spring tension. If it's on high throttle, which it really should be while it's trying to start, it should automatically try to go there. It's going to spring back to low throttle. Just move that out of the way, and the whole carburetor is free. You can try before any of this to fix this by draining just the fuel from the carburetor here, which is the side 10mm bolt. That'll drain the whole system out. It's kind of a pain though to catch any of that up under here since it sits right over the tire. And see what's on the inside of this carburetor. This is just like the setup with a lot of generators anymore, and I'll take these other pieces off and kind of show you that a little bit better. This motor acts as your governor on this unit. It's all electronically controlled based on the engine speed. It's the only thing this is based on. Normally they have a mechanical governor going over that way and sitting over here. This has none of that. It's all been replaced by this system. Before I dive into cleaning this, let's take the top off and I'll show you exactly how this all mounts for the governor control. This gets a little bit tricky if it all flies apart on you for any reason. 2 Phillips head screws, and then if you take that straight off, oh, I guess there's one more here. That bracket comes just straight up and off. And now if you look here, there's a spring and then there's this other plastic piece. Those have got to stay just like such when they go back in there if they come apart. And that just fits down into the notch here and sits against this little pin. Got that in there a little bit wrong, a little bit wonky. And this one's a little bit harder to take out than many of them that I've seen. Just like such when it goes back in. And this will always snap to the low throttle position. So if your motor is on the high position when it comes out, you can turn it in order to line it up and get this all back in like it should be. We'll take out our pilot jet here real quick. Just unscrew this. And then this just pops straight up and out. That's your pilot jet. There's a tiny little hole straight down through there. I like to use just a piece of a wire brush to poke that out. It's real small that you need to get in there. If you just take a wire loom out, a wire brush like such, and take that and just poke it straight through, and you should be able to see it in the middle there when you're poking it through. That should be free of any gum or varnish or anything like that. Otherwise, your snowblower is not going to run correctly. It's going to surge if that's not clear. We use gum out carburetor cleaner when we're cleaning anything like this. Just a little bit better than others, in my opinion. Since I got carb cleaner on it, I'm going to throw it back down in there real quick. Sometimes the O-rings will swell if you leave carburetor cleaner on them. We've got the pilot jet cleaned. We can clean the rest. As we're putting this back through, you want it about 1/8 of an inch past your aluminum here. Again, to drain the entire system, you can drain it from here, but very hard to catch if you're doing that. Otherwise, to take the bowl off, we'll take it off there at the bottom. It all looks very clean. I don't really see anything that's real bad or anything. Maybe a few pieces of something down in there. Take the pin for the float out. Take the float itself out. There's maybe a little bit of varnish around there, for sure, on the needle. Again, nothing really major. And we'll take our main jet out. To do that, you'll want a good screwdriver that fits down in there far enough that it's going to not strip that brass out. And you want to kind of push everything together as you're doing that so it doesn't strip that brass out. Once that happens, you've got your main jet come out, and then there's an emulsion tube up through here. If that doesn't come straight out, there it came out, but you can see it up through the middle if you open the choke. You'll be able to see it right down in here. Now, if that won't come out, you can kind of pry from here up to get it out, and it'll remove it. Sometimes if it's really stuck, you can use some carburetor cleaner down in there and kind of work it back and forth. Even after you pry, even after you're prying on this piece, sometimes it'll get stuck a little bit further down, and you can push it back in again, work it with some carburetor cleaner. That's all good. Now we can blow down through all of these different passageways with carburetor cleaner. Get that all cleaned out. It's not going to hurt anything whatsoever. We normally use an ultrasonic cleaner to clean all this out. This one's really not bad at all though, so I'm not even going to worry about it. If you've got a bunch of gum or varnish or anything, you can use that wire brush to brush all that off at the same time. And then you take that same loom or a different loom that you pulled out, or you can use some torch tip cleaners. Either way, and you can either do it with a pair of needle nose and get it down in here. You want to make sure that that seat where that needle's supposed to go to is nice and clean. Clean that out real well with that soft wire brush. Now, that's aluminum pieces, so it doesn't scratch anything. Go all the way along the outside. Make sure that's completely clean down in there. This one's in pretty good shape. Again, I don't really see any issues. Got one more good cleaning. Then this emulsion tube. It looks like it has some varnish on it. I'll clean it off. Mainly looks discolored. Should be able to see straight through all these holes all the way through. If you can't, there's plugging going on in those. You can also use that torch tip cleaner, or again your piece of a wire brush or whatever you're using to poke through these. Should go all the way through each one. If it doesn't, again, you know you have an issue. Should also be able to see all the way through this way. You can stick a couple of those in there, or one. Oh yeah, we're getting a bunch of varnish out that way. That may have been our issue. See all that stuff coming out there? It's blocking our main jet coming up. Get that cleaned out real good. I like to just hold my finger over the end here and blow real good. I'm getting even spray from all of them. You can use compressed air. It works very well to clean this out also. I don't see anything left down in that emulsion tube. Let's check out our main jet. Again, kind of the same thing. You can use a piece of a wire brush or a torch tip cleaner or whatever you like, just as long as it gets clean. Clear that all the way through also. Again, quite a bit of stuff in there. Definitely seems like that's what our issue is going to be. You can also blow all the way through, make sure it has a good spray. Sure looking that way. We can take the needle off. Just slides back. There's a spring on it that you can take right off. You want to make sure this is clean all the way around, and especially at the corners. See all that gum and stuff on there? That's got to come off, otherwise this needle can get stuck. You'll be running into major issues with that. Nice and clean. You want to make sure this tip is a complete triangle, that it's not deformed or anything like that. If it is, you'll also want to address that. To put it back on, you can just kind of hold this spring down, work it through at the back side. You want to make sure it locks in, everything's even down at this little space in the plastic. You also want to clean this float off all the way if it's got stuff on it. Doesn't look like this has a ton on it, but it does have some. And we'll go ahead and put this emulsion tube back in. That smaller part goes down if you got it upside down. That still looks... Okay, I thought it looked like it had something in it, but it was just a little bit of the carburetor cleaner still. Again, if you've got an ultrasonic cleaner, it makes this really, really easy to do. If you start screwing it in and it feels like it's getting resistance on it, it's because the emulsion tube's not pushed all the way down in. That's why I just kind of tapped it there, make it fall in. Just gonna kind of blow that off, dry it all out. All right, now we can put our float back in. See, that looked like it still had some stuff on it too, but again, I think it was just carb cleaner again. As you get this back in here, your pin, a little piece of black something there. You can blow all that off again, but you want to make sure that this moves freely in and out. If it's getting stuck at all, that's going to be an issue. We're good there. And also at the bottom, you want to make sure this is all cleaned out. I'm trying not to use carburetor cleaner down there because I don't want to swell up this gasket. It's kind of stuck to the bowl, which is good. But if we clean all that out, it'll keep any of that from getting back up in that jet. Looked like there was some around the outside of the bowl. Normally once you get carburetor cleaner on this, it'll swell up real bad. It's stuck to here, so we're in good shape, and the bottom bowl is clean. When we put it back on, the drain will go 180 opposite of the inlet. Make sure the bottom here is clean also, because that could input more debris back into the carburetor. Tighten that up. All this is still how it should be, and we can put our plastic adapter back on there. These are all the same size as far as the bolts go, or the screws go. Back on just how they came off. Perfect. Everything is free. You can double check that everything moves freely. And now we're ready to put it back on. The tank has been finished draining for a while. May still be a little bit of residual in there. We're going to blow all that out with compressed air to make sure that we're starting with fresh and that there's nothing left in that tank. I don't really see anything. Again, you can use some carburetor cleaner down in there. That'll help kind of dry up anything if there's any moisture. That'll also help clean out that filter that does sit on the inside of the tank there. Sometimes those can get clogged. If you're not getting good flow from your fuel line, you want to check that. We're all set there. I am going to remove the gasket from behind it. This one here, just because I always do. And we're going to use a Honda replacement in order to replace that. Put these part numbers down below. They're going to be pretty well the same thing. Fit straight on there, and that just gives it a good seal to this back plate again. If we look, we can see the IntelliPOWER control. It's just that switch, and then it also has 3 wires going to some wires back there. Nothing much to it as far as it goes, and this is, again, based on every one I've seen of these, it's just ran off of engine speed off the charging system, basically off of the stator. It tells this how fast it's going, and this board controls the engine speed from there, along with this little stepper motor or whatever you want to call it that controls where the throttle is positioned. The throttle is positioned, which acts as a governor as opposed to a traditional mechanical governor. Put the carburetor back on now. Go straight in. Again, we want to line this up, this motor, with how the alignment here is going. So if I turn it, I've already kind of turned it to where I wanted it. I'm going to just turn it back to high, because that's where we're going to want to start it at. Should automatically adjust there anyway once it doesn't start, as soon as it's getting a signal from that stator. Good there. We can hook our fuel line back up. I normally snip it back just a hair, but this fuel line is extremely tight, so I'm not worried about it. If you snip it back a hair, just like a 1/16 or 1/8 of an inch, it'll seal better on there. Again, this one's pretty darn new. I think it's only less than a year old, so not too terribly worried about that one. On the front of these, most of them have a gasket of some sort. I don't see one in this case. Never a bad idea to have one. I'm gonna put one of these on here off of the same style carburetor. Got it backwards, need it on right. It's just got rubber on both sides. Kind of seals that off. It's gonna make sure that we don't have issue with snow or anything getting in there. Two 10mm nuts. Go right back on. And again, make sure those spacers are in there on this plastic. Tighten these back up. And then we'll want to put our primer line on. Put it back through just like such into this little notch. Keep it out of the way. And we'll turn it around. And the whole thing kind of goes back up and on. Now the wiring in back is going to sit, looks like directly behind where this piece is. So you don't want it in front, it needs that extra space. It goes down and over. And we're ready to put these bolts back in that hold the cover on. And just those four, the two smaller ones here, and the two bigger ones on the far side. As we're going to fill this up with fuel now, you do want to make sure that you're using a good fuel. What we use is an ethanol-free fuel. It's just going to keep you from having issues in the long run. We also treat it with what they call Phaser 3000. It's mostly 2-butoxyethanol, we believe. It just keeps the moisture or anything that were to get into it mixed back throughout. It's not going to allow it to separate out of the fuel. You have to figure out where you took this out at and put it back. And let's move this to high. Let's put some fuel in it and we'll fire it up. Well, that didn't work well. If you're gonna leave it sit for a long time, you do want it filled all the way up. Now we're in summer right now, so this fuel is gonna sit in here for probably a good 3 months before they're gonna use this. Either use a canned fuel if that's the case, or use something that's ethanol free and treated. It's the only way this is still gonna run right 3 months from now. Prime it a couple times. Now we've got this thing back up and going with virtually zero money, zero time, just a quick, easy process to get this thing drained, cleaned, and back into working order. You can see that these things are just as ethanol sensitive as all the other models of engines out there. What's this IntelliPOWER about? I'm not a real big fan. What's going to happen when the stators start to go bad, wiring starts to get old? Are they going to continue to make those control boards to where it can go to low, medium, high speed? I don't know. I guess time will only tell with that, but this is the future of what we're going to see on all these different snowblowers. It's either going to be something like this where there's no mechanical governor, otherwise it's going to be electronic fuel injected. Seeing that more and more across the board with snowblowers. Try to do some more videos as we get those here this winter. Hopefully this helps somebody get their snowblower back up and going. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy the content.